Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Event. And welcome to this podcast in which we delve deep into the different types of horror films out there, from many different subgenres to many different decades. I say that because one of the films we're doing, or the film we're doing today, is a film that is considered a universal classic. Now, if you've been with us for the duration of our iteration, you will realize that we've done a lot of different types of films here. And this year, we are trying to get to as many of the classic Universal horror films out there as we can, because it's something that we kind of avoided the first year, trying to get into some other more well-known films. But with the Universal horror films, since a lot of them are being remade or being brought back in different and interesting ways, we have decided that it's very interesting for us to kind of tackle these classic films out there, so that if you've seen them before, you can go out there and have a different aspect of watching them again. Or if you've never seen them before, you will actually take a chance on some of these films. So with that being said, I also want you to know that it is our aquatic horror film month, and we are going to not only celebrate that, but also celebrate original Universal monsters by talking about Creature from the Black Lagoon, the original movie. And to talk about this movie with me today, I have my special guest, Dave Watkins. We want to thank you for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's be a good time.
Thank you for joining us. Me and Dave have talked about some of the other Universal monster movies throughout this year. Like I said, it's a mandate that we try and get to some of those classic movies out there for all of you out there, to show that we are kind of delving into all the different decades and different subgenres out there. So, in addition to that, we are also asking all of you out there who are listening to our podcast, if you can, make sure to leave a comment regarding other types of films you would like us to tackle. Because without knowing what you would like us to talk about, we don't know what to talk about. So, with that, we're going to start a conversation about Creature from the Black Lagoon. And I'm going to ask Dave this, because I like to get the kind of generalization of a lot of people. When did you first kind of see this film, and what were your impressions of this film?
That's I don't remember when I first saw it really. I was probably fairly young though. I was pretty aware of it earlier on. I've seen it a lot of times over the years.
Hmm.
It's hard for me to say my first impression. I think I always kind of dug it, but I do have some. I mean, I think that as far as I guess I don't know. As far as the way I've always thought it's a cool concept. I think the creature looks really good. Like the costume looks really cool. But
Hmm.
it is what's interesting about this movie is that it was the last major Universal Studios monster. It was the last of the bunch, and it was like the last. This is a trilogy, ended up being a trilogy, and it was the last three films that were kind of made for Universal monsters before they kind of stopped making the classic monsters until they stopped making them for a long time. And it was a bridge between what was kind of gothic horror, and this was a lot different than any of the other ones because most of them were
Hmm.
gothic horror, and this one kind of went into a kind of a monster movie, which is closer to like it was 1954 is what this one was made, so it's kind of in the era where sci-fi became really popular, so it was kind of bridging. It's not necessarily science fiction, but it is unlike the other ones. It is kind of a more of a monster creature film.
Hmm. So, my recollections of this film are not as old as some of you out there. You probably hate to hear this from me, but I only recently have entered into the original Universal monster movies within the last less than decade. The ones that I have seen before then, I had seen in college, which is Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, because I did papers on James Wells. Uh, and so I just never watched any of these until within the last 10 years. So
Yeah.
I'm coming to this having known about what and who the creature from the Black Lagoon is. I've seen lots of photographs of them. I am really familiar with the monster, the costume, all that, but I had never actually seen the film until within the last 10 years when they released the box set, I think there was the Legacy box set, and I kind of did a deep dive of all the Universal monster movies, and I bought them all, and then finally sat down and watched them all to kind of get an idea of some of these monster movies that Universal had made. I hadn't really seen many of them before that, other than Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, like I said, and Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Most of the other ones I had never seen before then. So it was interesting for me to kind of delve into these. Unfortunately, at the time, The Creature from the Black Lagoon and its sequels were not some of the ones I actually gravitated towards, which is unfortunate. But I'm glad I was able to take another look at the film, older now, and kind of reassess what I originally thought of when I originally saw this. So the film itself, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just yeah. So I guess like you had two different impressions. I would guess the first time you saw it, you weren't very impressed with the pacing of it. Is that what I'm? That's what you're going to say when it?
It was because the ideal for the Creature from the Black Lagoon had what I'd read and what I'd seen from photos, because there was between Famous Monsters of Filmland, Fangoria, and all the other magazines out there that I read at the time. I had seen lots of photos of this movie, especially the first movie. Not so many of the second and third one, but especially this movie. So I was very familiar with a lot of the imagery in there. But when you watch it, when you're older, it's not as impressive a movie as you would think, and that was even me diving deep into all of these Universal monster movies. Now, I know me and Dave discussed beforehand, like when I watched them, I kind of bought these legacy box sets and watched them all like within a couple weeks, probably in order of a franchise, one franchise after the next, after the next. And I just did a deep dive of watching them all because I hadn't seen a lot of them. I didn't
I
grow up on
think
the
yeah.
Universal monsters like a lot of
I did
people
something
did.
similar. Yeah, I did something similar to that. I think during it was just one year. It's like maybe 15, 20 years ago. It was near Halloween, and I just like watched a bunch of them like that, and bought them and watched them all. And like some of I'd never seen before. Some of the sequels, but this I think this one's very unique though. As I was saying before about the gothic horror, this is and it might be a little jarring if you're watching the rest of them in order because it's completely different than the
Mm-hmm.
others. But the Mummy's a little different too than the others in a way, but it still kind of has still is a man to begin with. This is a gill man. It was technically it's called a gill man, but it was never a man to begin with. It was always like a fish that's kind of becoming a man, and it got over the trilogy of the films. In the third one, it actually that he does become more human in the third one. But I mean, what's really interesting about it too is that it's just that underwater photography is and how they accomplish that is quite amazing, and how much of it might determine how much tolerance you have for it if when you're watching it because there is a lot of the underwater stuff and the music's really cool that goes with it. And what was when this first came out, it was shot in 3D. It's one of the first
Mm-hmm.
3D films, and I've never seen it in 3D. But I bet those underwater sequences look really awesome in 3D, and it's probably more. I think they're a little drawn out. Some of them, I bet seeing that in 3D is probably a lot more entertaining.
Now you bring up something that people who, even by today's standards, the underwater sequences are amazing to watch. That is still nothing to shy about. Though the underwater sequences still hold up extremely well. Even though I would not hesitate to believe that these were shot in a pool somewhere, they still look
Well,
amazing.
there actually was shot in Florida in an actual like lake underwater. Like I watched the behind the scenes documentary about it. So like most of it was shot underwater in a real lake like that in Florida.
I say that because those sequences where they dive down into to go into the creature's cave seem completely removed from the rest of the caves, the underwater sequences. Like
Well,
they'll
yeah.
go from like 2 feet of water to like 300 feet of water that you're diving down to get to the cave. And that seemed really off to me. That's the only thing in this entire movie that seemed off to me when I rewatched it. I don't know if I ever felt that way when I first watched it, but when I rewatched it, I was paying more attention to all of these things. And that was the only thing that struck me. One, it actually looked beautiful, but two, it's like, wow, they went from 2 feet where it's only at their knees to going like diving deep into this water. And
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that the lagoon would be deep enough to warrant that. And then on the other side, you're inside his cave, which he can actually walk out of the cave and get to the beach area.
Well, I guess the other guys, the captain and the other guy, figure out how to get into it from the beach area. But
Yeah.
it is a little bit of a jump though when they jump into the water to go, and they don't bring the scuba diving gear. It's like they know that they can get in there almost before they do it. Which is I guess it is when that happens. It is kind of like, how do they know? I guess we should talk a little bit about the plot before we get into like what's almost the last scene of the film.
It's funny because with this film, unlike me, I believe there's a lot more people who have seen this film. I don't know actually. Like most people assumed I had seen this film. I talked to my good friend Ron, who had always thought I'd probably seen these movies, and I told him I ain't seen none of them except for like the classic original Universal monster movies. Before I did that deep dive of watching them all at once, I hadn't seen many of them,
Yeah,
because not because they were black and white. Some of my favorite movies of all time are black and white. It's just that those were films that just never clicked with me growing up, and I didn't watch them in college because we didn't study them. So
I
therefore,
don't.
I
Yeah,
skipped them.
I'm not sure how available they were though until they started releasing those sets on DVD like they did, because they weren't necessarily readily available. Like especially the sequels weren't as much.
Just on VHS.
Yeah,
That's
I
about
mean,
it.
but yeah, but I mean, you could have gotten them, but the way that they did those sets and they included all the stuff, it made it very
Hmm.
desirable. It made it very appealing to
Oh
buy
yeah.
them and check it out. You know, and I think that was kind of what. Yeah, some of them, like most of them, I'd seen at least the first one of them, but most of them I hadn't seen hardly any of the sequels until I started like really watching the sets. You know?
Hmm. No, 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 no. I agree with you. Even when I was buying VHS tapes, I think the only ones I had was Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Um, I had none of the other ones on VHS. I do know that they existed, but I never bought them. Um, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, yeah, they weren't.
Yeah, I don't think I had any either. I don't think I had any of them. But no,
No, I only know that they existed after the fact. Like after they came out on the Legacy set, you would see. I used to read these articles in Horror Hound magazine where they go back VHS Invasion, I think, and they show all the different VHS versions of these movies. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess they did make them in VHS. I just forgot because I just never bothered with them. Like I think they were just movies that they were these old black and white classic movies that appealed to people who like classic movies. But there was no one out there kind of pushing them towards normal people until the legacy
yeah,
sets came out. And then they offered all of them. So you could watch them
right.
all at once, you
I
know?
think that's yeah. I think the way that they were presented on VHS, it did like you look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, that's old. You know, they made like, the way that they designed them on the you know the the legacy sets and made it look very much like, okay, I need to check this out. That looks pretty
Yeah.
good. You know?
So, and the creature from the Lagoon is actually an interesting concept. It starts off with scientists who find a fossilized hand in a rock, and then the main guy goes back. What's the main
Well, he's
Carl?
not really the main. He's not really the main guy. He's the guy who finds it to begin with, but he's a major
Yeah,
character, but he's not really the main guy. But
yeah. Carl goes back to get his friend David. I guess his thoughts on this hand that he finds, this fossilized hand, which is
right,
very huge hand, by the way. It's a
yeah.
giant hand.
Then
Uh,
like too though, like what happens when he finds the fossil hand, like it shows like the water and the real creature's hand comes out of the water. It doesn't show the
mhm.
creature yet. His hand just comes out, and when it does, it's like like real loud. It's like, okay, you could have like not been that loud with the music. It was a little bit of a horn trumpet there, you know.
Well,
It's
they
like,
also use that shot multiple times too in the movie when they were
yeah,
before they actually show the monster. The hand just creeps out of the water.
the
That's
same
all.
exact shot. Yeah.
Exact same as
This,
that.
but yeah, every time it show, the weird thing is like the music's kind of cool, like the but it's
Mhm.
so loud, and then it's like I was thinking about it though. But I bet when people were watching this initially in 1954, when that happened, they were probably like, "Holy shit!"
Hmm.
You know, when they heard that music. But the music's like every time it shows the creature, it's overused, and it's like it could have. It would have been better had they just been a little bit softer with it. Maybe the first time a little bit, but then just a little softer, unless something really crazy happens, and then go big with it. But it seems like they just go big every time. You know, they're just like throw it all in. It's like,
I see this as like a William Castle movie, because the music does that too. In a William
yeah,
Castle
yeah,
movie, to kind of draw attention to itself, and this being a 3D movie, it was
yeah,
probably doing that. I kind of got that impression when I was watching it. I was like, oh, because I thought about the music in the same way. I was like, wow, because I noticed the shots that were reused and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
They're trying to hide the monster, yet show that there is a monster because
Right.
the monster has these beautiful shots when you first see him swimming with the female lead
Yeah,
when they find themselves in the Black Lagoon. But just a little bit more of the story, of course, is that Carl goes to David, and after some finagling with his financier, the person who gives him money for David's expeditions and his research, they all kind of cobble together that they'll do this as a research to go out there and find the rest of the skeleton that the hand belongs to, not expecting to find an actual monster.
yeah. Well, I
Uh,
get a couple things about the characters real quick. Now, these
yeah,
characters, David and Mark is the guy who's the financer, who's they're both like um I guess they're probably maybe in their 30s, and the other guy, the original guy, is fairly old looking. These guys are pretty good shape, and a lot of times they don't have their shirts on. And then there's a girl,
yes,
and then there's a girl, Kay, who's there, who's apparently some a little bit drama that happens behind the scenes of this thing. That's kind of a little bit of it, but she was working for Mark first, and then
mm-hmm.
David came on, and then now she's with David, and so it's kind of causing some friction between really everybody. It's kind of like one of those work relationships. It's just like all of a sudden it just David's the main character, and Mark's
Uh-huh.
often shown in a bad light, because he's kind of like more obsessed with the like
Profits
basic
and
profit and exposition or not exposition, what exhibition of the
exhibition.
creature.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I just want to throw that out there just so people have an idea about these characters. They're not really that stuffy of a characters. They're kind of young dudes, and they're
Hmm.
and they're pretty well built. Because and even Julia Adams looks really good in a bathing suit when later on she's swimming with the creature. So
Yeah, which I was always trying to figure out exactly what she does for this entire scientific expedition,
yeah,
other than jump in the water when everyone else is below decks in the boat, so that she can take a
right.
random swim.
Yeah, but she actually was involved with it. It doesn't appear that way at first. At first, she just seems like a random like secretary type of character that
Hmm.
like and that she's like for to me it seems like at first, but there's some dialogue later on that kind of establishes this further into the film. But at first to me it seems like David is the dude
Hmm.
and she is like is his girlfriend, but she was actually there first and working for Mark. So it kind of changes the whole dynamic once you know that. And she's
Yes.
not just random; she's actually part of the team. And even though she does do some off-brand stuff, like go and jump in the water when everybody else goes down below, and almost gets killed. If it would have been one of the dudes doing that, they would have got killed. Same. Fortunately, the creature likes her because he thinks she's hot.
Yes, well, Beauty and the Beast type of story here,
Yeah, yeah.
and it does not shy away from those references at all,
Yeah,
which is actually makes the creature more sympathetic, despite the fact that the creature does kill several characters and even tries to thwart them from leaving the lagoon
yes.
at one point.
Well, a couple things about that. One is like the first thing they do is they come into his territory and
Hmm.
start doing stupid shit. Like, and then when when they really piss him off, when they catch him on fire or whatever, that's when he goes and blocks him in. I think at that point it's become kind of personal. Before that,
Yeah,
he just only attacks when needed. But I think when he blocks them in the lagoon, I think he's pissed off and he's ready to kill all of them at that point.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a nice thing that you bring that up because it all depends on how you look at this character because he does kill Carl's two people that Carl leaves behind at the campsite, and it seems unprovoked because these guys are inside their tents when they get
Yeah,
attacked. But after that, it's like that scene's in there just to give audiences more screen time with the monster, the creature, and to build up some suspense for when you actually see the creature. But most of his motivation comes after Mark has shot him with the underwater
yeah,
arrow,
yeah. The
the
dart thing.
blow dart thing.
Yeah,
And up until then, David's like saying, "No, no, you
yeah,
should study him from a distance," type thing. Don't aggravate the the
yeah.
creature. And at that point, we think Mark is like a douchebag for wanting to be. We gotta catch him alive. We have to put him on exhibition. He could be worth more to us than anything else. So, he
Yeah, and he
really.
kind of like he wears it on his sleeve too. He says it out
Mhm.
loud. It's something that you think he might be a bit a little subtle about that, but he says it out loud what he wants to do, and he becomes very headstrong about it, and
Mhm.
it ends up leading to his demise, unfortunately. Um, but think about that scene you just mentioned about the two guys and it kills earlier on. I mean, it is kind of somewhat unprovoked, but I guess it doesn't like that they're messing with the fossil. It sees them take the fossil, and I guess it's not necessarily warranted, but they are encroaching on its like kind of, yeah, not necessarily, I guess you would say property, but its environment. It's basically its habitat that it lives in, and it knows that it's now in danger because these people are starting to see things that
We're not
possibility
supposed
of
to.
something. Yeah, and so
This is like
it's trying to protect itself. You know.
this is like an underwater Bigfoot movie
Yeah.
where Bigfoot like does not want people to see any traces of its existence and will do whatever it has to keep
Yeah.
itself secret. That's pretty much
Yeah.
how I see the creature. The creature is a part of nature that has never been touched by man, and now man is going into places he shouldn't, and
Yeah.
encountering things that they would have never ever seen had they not encroached on nature's secret black lagoon, so to speak. Secret.
Yeah.
So
And so yeah, and what the hell, what was I going to say? Yeah, but this is just, I was going to say something to piggyback off of that, but I lost it now. But I'll come back to me in a minute. But yeah,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
the thing is that the creature has like free reign for it's like these people, the humans, David and the rest of the scientists, mind you, scientists
Yeah.
just are completely oblivious to the creature and what it can and can't do because the creature comes on their ship multiple times
Yeah.
without them knowing. Uh,
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but why would you think though? Why would you think it could get out of the water? It's hard to. Like if you're out in the water, like if we were just out on a friggin' lake or whatever, we wouldn't assume a fish could get out of the water and come and attack us, or
you know
even like
what?
an alligator, they don't come out and get on the boat.
You could be right. I was not thinking that way when I watched this, or when I've now watched it twice. That's actually that's a very valid point. I did not think about that. They call him the gill man. He's the fish guy. Why would they think he could actually get out of the water?
Yeah, it's like they don't know. I mean, you wouldn't know, but I guess yeah. The thing I was gonna say earlier that I blanked out on, I was gonna say I really think it's like the location of this is really cool. It's like on the
Oh,
Amazon River, and I like the way. Unlike some of the other monster movies, like say Dracula, when they go to Transylvania, it's only in there at the very beginning for the first 30 minutes. Here in the Mummy, you go to Egypt, but then you end up back in the museum. But here you start out in regular place, and then you go to the Amazon, and you kind of stay there the rest of the film.
That's a great point. That's a great point you make because the Black Lagoon that they end up at is really well done. It's a really great location. And it's a great, and that's the other thing I like to say is it's a great location, but it's also a great a location for the underwater sequences. The secret Black Lagoon. I wish they would show a lot more stuff that was in the lagoon itself. And if heaven forbid if they ever bother or get around or can possibly make finally a remake of this, they'll be able to show all the amazing stuff that you would see in the Black Lagoon. Um,
Like,
we
what
don't
kind of stuff you think you would see there?
well, and if you were to do it nowadays, you'd see a whole other world in the Black Lagoon that leads to the creature's cave. Now, this having sequels, you get the impression that there's going to be more than one of these monsters there, and
Yeah,
I honestly cannot remember what happens in either one of the sequels. I'd have to rewatch them. I
yeah. But
don't know.
I give you kind of a little bit of a gist of it. I didn't rewatch them recently, but in the second one, they go back and they capture him, and then they put him in an aquarium, and he's in the aquarium most of the film until he gets out and wreaks havoc everywhere. In the third one, he gets he gets caught on fire, and then they have to do some operation on him, and then they actually have to turn him half human. So then he can't go back into the water, and he's kind of acts like a human, or he tries to be a human, but he can't really do it, and he really wants to go back to the water, and it's kind of it's really a tragic story, the Gill Man in a way, and just what happens to him.
Now, because of the way this movie ends, and it makes it seem as though that the Gill Man is killed at the end, is the one in the sequel supposed to be the same Gill Man or a different Gill Man?
I think
Do you think?
it's supposed to be the same one.
Okay.
The design of the suits different. It looks a lot different, but I think it's supposed to be the same one.
Okay. See, I never even thought about that. I kept thinking it was always different, and he died at the end of this one. But like I said,
Yeah.
I've only seen the second and third movie once, and so I
Yeah.
do not remember them at all.
It doesn't show him die, but what the wounds that he gets inflicted with, those do seem to that he would be dead from them. He gets shot, but yeah, apparently the sequel, I think it's supposed to be the same one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it's a sequel. You gotta make them live
yeah,
somehow.
right. Well, they like you said, they could have just had another one, but that I like that captain character is pretty funny. That he has that
Oh
boat,
yeah.
the Rita boat. It's pretty good performance by that guy. Pretty laid back and um
Yeah,
yeah
but it's his boat. He's the captain, and Mark can't talk him into something he doesn't want to do. I really love the scenes with the captain. I think
yeah
they're
yeah
I think they're some of my favorite scenes
yeah
because they're funny. They're funny and they seem genuine. That's the whole cast actually seems pretty good in this movie. Actually, to be honest with you, even though there are some questionable stuff with the female character because she's the only female character, obviously, in this movie.
yeah.
Other than that, I think this is a highly enjoyable film, even today. I found myself enjoying it more the second time when I was looking at it more critically than when I watched it the first time I saw it.
So yeah. And I think like they actually do some work with some of even the supporting characters. They do some interesting work with some of the dialogue occasionally when they're all sitting around talking.
Hmm.
Um, the the female character, there would, I mean, there's like, I guess there's reasons for it. And I think that if it kind of seems like her jumping in the water, like you're saying, I guess that's kind of like that. And it's funny when he comes out and he says something like, you shouldn't have been doing that. That was dangerous. She's like, yeah, but it was wonderful. It's like, it is, I don't know. But I mean, what else bothers you about her that she's in it?
Well, no, I would have. And this is because I did not watch this when it came out. I didn't grow up with this movie. But the ideal is very similar to what I feel about the Barbara character in the original 68 Night of the Living Dead, where she doesn't do anything other than scream and and she's a very laid back and boring character.
Yeah,
It's one of the only flaws I see in the original 68 Night of the Living Dead.
you're right.
I
Yeah,
see that very similar to this one, where they could have done a lot with this character, but they don't do anything with her other than her be the object of these two men characters to create this love triangle, and then the love interest of the creature, and that's about all they wrote for her. she, like
Yeah,
she's supposed to be a scientist, and I would have liked to have seen her do more of the scientific stuff than the other two guys. But it seems as though that's literally her purpose. She may have been the one that got David into this group of scientists, but but we don't see any of that. She just simply
yeah.
is a like a secretary at this point, more or less. You know.
Right. Yeah, I could see that what you're saying there. That definitely tracks because I don't know how much we actually see her doing as far as anything other than cause trouble, you know.
And
But
it's not trouble on purpose.
yeah,
Uh, because and this scene still holds up extremely well. The scene where she's swimming and the creature is swimming underneath her is still an amazing piece of cinematography there. It's
right.
really
Yeah.
extremely well done. It still holds up extremely well. Um,
The idea behind that is very interesting too, like the way the creature becomes fixated on her.
mhm,
But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an instance where she does do something like that shows her actually working with the exposition because it seems like she does have some dialogue where she tries to talk about stuff
mhm,
that's going on. I mean, she does put herself in there to try to discuss stuff, but it does kind of come down to the drama between the two men, which one of them, the Mark character, I don't think she's really a romantic interest, but it's more of like she's working for him and
mhm.
she kind of feels some loyalty towards him where I don't think it doesn't seem like he's interested in her in that way. But he's interested in her as being on his side because he needs somebody to side with him for what he's trying to accomplish or what he wants to accomplish, which is is presented in a bad way because of they get the creature like it's kind of like King Kong too, like the
Yes,
guy in King Kong that wants to bring which King Kong was 1933. This was after that, so it does have a lot of King Kong in it as far as wanting to bring the creature back and so forth.
yeah, yeah. Greed, money. You know,
Yeah,
money makes a and she does make a comment about him that they wouldn't be where they are without people like Mark.
yeah,
Early on, that's the kind of like the reason why Mark's character is there. Without people like Mark, they couldn't do expeditions like
yeah,
those. You know, even
yeah, yeah.
Carl says the whole point of Carl is there to not only show David what he discovered, but also to get money to extend his expedition. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they definitely need Mark in order to make it happen, and they, it's unfortunate that he kind of like gets so headstrong about it and not even like listening to anything. And it's weird that he doesn't care when people start getting seriously maimed and killed. It's like that should be even if I mean, you got to be worried about your own life at some point. You know, that one guy that's with him gets all jacked up and he's completely bandaged up. And at that point, the major concern would be to get him to a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of trying to do that, Mark's like, we got to keep working on this. So, I mean, that's definitely the point in time in which they always try to draw him in a bad light throughout the film, even though
Mm-hmm.
some of what he does has some merit or has some in reality that is the person that is somewhat important, even though you're not necessarily going to listen to him. But it is sort of it is like the way that it suddenly becomes at that point. It's like, okay, this guy is he's not horrible. He's not a horrible
No,
antagonist person, but he's still presented a little bit good. But he definitely is like, he's more headstrong about what's going on than he should be at that
yeah.
point.
Well, that's what makes him such an extreme character, and you kind of get that sense. Some of these characters are like that because David is all into trying to be the good guy, the real scientist. We're doing this for science. We don't need to be antagonistic to the creature. We should just study him from a distance. We're here for the fossils, stuff like that. That's what
Yeah.
comes out of his mouth, more so from him than even from Carl, who only really wants the fossil to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. One thing interesting that the female character does is at one point she's smoking a cigarette out on the ship deck and she just throws the butt into the water. It's like what are you doing? So
This was
I mean,
1954. Everyone
yeah,
was smoking. They just
yeah.
smoking wasn't bad for the environment or for you.
But wasn't even the smoking though? It's the littering.
Yeah.
And then the creature was watching her, but I don't think he cares that she littered. He's more like still into her. But it's like that's like part of, I guess, with her character is, and she's kind of on the fence between the two opinions of the two guys. Like she
Mm.
can see both sides in a way, even though it ultimately comes down to when when the shit hits the fan and the one guy's all in bandages and David's like, okay, we're going back, screw you, and then the guy then the captain has to say, I'm the captain, so we're going to do what I say, and I want to go back too. So
Mhm.
it's like,
Which is one hell of a funny scene too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Now, of course, at this point, this is when the creature has blocked their exit from the lagoon because he's really pissed off now.
yeah. Just what's funny is the way that it looks when you're watching the film. It looks like he's thrown like a little bitty tree into the water, and then they're just like, "Oh no, it's a little tree," you know. But I guess it's like deeper in there because they have to go under it, and there's more under the water. But
Yeah,
yeah, they're trapped in there pretty good.
which is kind of weird considering that either the creature is really strong or he's using some tools to chop down those trees to put them in the way.
Yeah, I think he's pretty strong. That's what I think he is. It's like they have a heck of a time moving that stuff out of there.
It all seems logical though. They want and that's one of the other things about this. In theory, everything that the scientists present seems in a very logical manner. It doesn't seem like this far away type of science like what's depicted in the original Frankenstein. It's or Bride of Frankenstein for that matter. Uh, what the scientists are doing and how they react seems almost like what they might have done in the real world. They're
Yeah.
not. I think that adds a little something to the actual story and ambiance, despite the fact that the female character doesn't do much in the film, but she does. Like
I don't think they're actually scientists. There's something like, it,
researchers.
yeah, like, researchers or not archaeologists. I think they actually may have say something like ichthyosaurus, like something. But they're basically kind of like the Jurassic Park people who
Yeah,
go out and
anthropologists.
yeah, kind of like that. But they're more about fish life, and that's what they are. They're not really scientists. You
Hey,
know.
they're all types of scientists.
Well, I guess
They're
they are
just
kind of technically scientists, but they're not
they're
like Dr. Frankenstein
no,
scientists.
no,
You
they're
know, so,
archaeologists and
yeah,
anthropologists.
yeah, yeah,
It's kind of a mixture of the two. That's why they're more concerned about research and watching from afar, like you're watching an animal in nature do its normal thing. That's what David would like to do, instead of capturing it, putting it in a cage, and seeing
yeah,
what it does. You know,
yeah.
uh,
Which is which is interesting because they did over time kind of take that mindset in films and move it to the female lead instead of having
mm,
like the male lead have that point of view. That point of view eventually went to the female, and then the male lead would usually be a little more like Mark, and then over the course of the film start to change his mind about you had start to see her point of view more. That's how it that's how it eventually like went in that direction.
um, I'm trying to find. Okay, so this was 54. Good. Because what this reminded me of, the female character in this, is the exact same way I see the female character in 1951's The Thing from Another World. Female character
Yeah,
never really seems like she's a scientist in that movie. She's just there as the female love interest. And it
yeah, yeah,
always thought was weird. And
yeah,
I've seen that movie a lot. It's just like I've seen a lot of these other movies. I think that was just part of the 50s, that era, to be honest with you.
yeah,
Um, and that's one of the things that dates these movies, because you're right. A lot of movies nowadays, the female would be the lead. We went through a whole decade of the 80s and 90s with the Scream Queens,
yeah,
with where it was always a female lead who was the last one to survive and would be the most knowledgeable character. But in the 50s, they would seem like the most unknowledgeable characters. And I think
yeah,
that's what bothers me about watching these older movies like this. they're kind of the eye candy,
Yeah.
and they're kind of the ones who are they're the love interest, and we don't see them actually do a lot of what they're supposed to be doing, as what their characters are supposed to be. Um, it's about the only thing that dates the movie really for me. Like I said, I love the cinematography of this movie.
Yeah.
I love the concept of this movie. Uh, I I remember this one more so than the other two. I can tell you that much. But I've also read a lot
Yeah.
more about this movie. So
Yeah, I mean, well, this one's definitely like I think most of them are like this, with the exception of Bride of Frankenstein. There, most of the sequels are inferior to the first ones,
mm,
and they kind of become they're a lot of times they're harder to remember because they're not as rememberable, and they kind of retread things. But even though the sequels to this do kind of follow a different path than a lot of the other ones, and they do, unlike some of the other ones, they do keep pretty good continuity between them in a way, even though the creature looks a little different. Yeah, but
well, if it is true, and this is the exact same creature through all three movies, then there is great continuity in this series as opposed to some of the other ones.
right, yeah, but yeah, I mean, but really, they're all kind of like it becomes harder. Like the more sequels it has, it's harder to keep them separated as far as remembering the plots and things of that nature. Um, but I think I do like the trajectory of the three films.
Okay, so these are considered classic movies, and unfortunately, The Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of the few that has not had a chance to be remade yet. Universal has made remakes of pretty much all of their monsters at some point, except for The Creature from
Yeah,
the Black Lagoon. Do you find this as a problem with the character itself, or with the films not having such as great a legacy as some of the other ones because this was the last one in the cycle? What do you see with this
yeah.
movie?
Well, two things about that. They tried to do a remake with Guillermo del Toro, and he ended up having some ideas they didn't like. But then he took those ideas and he made the film The Shape of Water, which is
Mm,
actually, in a way, it is a remake of the Creature from the Black Lagoon in a way,
hmm
which is actually I like that film. But it's he took the idea of the infatuation with the creature and the girl kind of to an extreme level in that, and they weren't liking that idea, and it is a little off-putting in a way, really. But that, as far as they were going to make it with him, but they didn't because they didn't like that idea. They thought it was a little taking it too far,
Yeah.
and he was insistent on doing it, and like he wasn't going to do it otherwise, and he didn't. Um, but they usually, I don't. This is different than the other ones. Like I said before,
hmm
it is takes place in a tropical area in the Amazon, and it is more like King Kong, and it's a creature feature. And they always, when they try to reboot this, and it's been very unsuccessful most of the time, and they always try to do it in a grounded reality, and it's also a pain in the ass to shoot this location. Like I say, they've been trying to make it. They tried to go big with this for a minute, and it backfired with the Dark Universe and the Mummy.
hmm
And now they've kind of reined it back, and they've tried to make it very, very small locations and very intimate locations, like they did the Invisible Man and the Wolf Man. Neither one of them had the scale of something like this, having to do this location. So I guess maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, I know that George Romero had was drafted at one point before he passed away to do a version of this long time ago. Now, and
Yeah,
of course
right.
they
Yeah,
brought in Guillermo del Toro to try. This one seems to be the Universal monster that is stuck in limbo. Universal has made various Dracula
yeah,
films over the years, as Mummy being the
yeah,
most popular and successful of all of them.
yeah.
Um,
Or unsuccessful. The last time they did it with the one with Brandon Fraser was very well received.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure they'll come up with a new one. If not, I think they're actually working on a new Mummy movie, to be honest with you. But like you said, the Wolfman they just did again. And then of course, Invisible Man, which is the one who hadn't been touched in a long time, which was
Yeah,
extremely successful. Uh, I think people love these classic monster movies, or these classic monsters. Sometimes they don't go back to watch these originals until there's a remake that warrants them going back to watching what inspired these remakes or reboots to begin with.
Right.
We all,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a while there, we all kind of thought that Dracula Untold was going to be the new start of Universal Monsters remakes again. Unfortunately, it was not, despite the fact I really love that movie.
Yeah. I don't know if there was ever that though for me. I never thought it was going to be that. It was when they it wasn't until they actually did the Mummy with Tom Cruise, and before they released it, that I
Mhm.
thought something was going to happen. I was like, okay, they're trying to be like Marvel, and that was what didn't work. But I did like the idea of once they going to throw out one with Tom Cruise in, I thought, okay, and it had, I mean, it kind of had a base layer that was kind of good. It just
Mhm.
didn't quite work, and it's not a very good movie. It's not very fun to watch. And I think that's the thing about a lot of these films. They are fun to watch. You gotta, that one just went a little outside of where it needed to go, I think. And it was kind of headache inducing to me. It was like a big, loud headache.
See, I like the Tom Cruise one. I do recognize that there was problems with it, mostly with the fact that I think they put a lot of characters in there.
Yeah,
Uh, because they're trying to build this. They were at the time trying to build this dark universe. Like I would have loved to have seen uh, Jekyll and Hyde in their own movies and not
yeah.
so much shoehorned into
And
that movie.
Russell Crowe is
Uh,
such a great
he
choice for
stole
that
some
character.
scenes. He
He's
was.
such a
He
great
stole.
choice. And I even like Tom Cruise's character. I
The
felt he was
tone
too
was
old
weird.
though. Yeah, I thought he was too old though for the way that the character was. It's something about it. That's the first time I've ever seen Tom Cruise in a film and thought this character is a lot older than I mean, a lot younger than he actually is. I felt that
Mm.
in the film, but which is like that, like that's the first time I ever thought that with him. But it was also the love interest was so much younger than him. It was kind of what, but I really liked the first half an hour of that film. That all that plane stuff that was
Mm.
fantastic. But then,
No, no, I agree with you.
yeah,
I thought
yeah,
it was really interesting. I even liked the fact the parts they stole or borrowed from American Werewolf in London, with the fact that his
yeah,
dead friend he could still talk to, uh,
yeah.
stuff
But
like that. I
that
liked
was
it.
cool. Yeah, yeah. That was cool, but that was a part of what made it hard though. It was really like Russell Crowe, which I really like. I think he's a terrific choice for that character. It was really once they shoehorned Jekyll into it, and all of a sudden they had like a league of extraordinary like gentlemen sort of like thing going on, and they're like, "Hey man, we're going to recruit you to fight this mummy," and it's like I don't know, and it was like, and then the mummy's with all her cronies and talking with these cronies and stuff, and and it's like.
No, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. I also but I hope I really do hope that it made people go back and look at the other Mummy movies that came before it. Uh, Not only the Brandon Fraser trilogy, but the original Universal monster movies, the with the Boris Karloff that came before it, because the Mummy movies surprisingly have endured multiple different generations. When you wouldn't think a Mummy movie would, you would think that the Frankenstein, Dracula, but I think because so many people have done those two particular characters to death because they're in the public domain, I think the Mummy movies have had free reign to kind of achieve something that some of the other ones didn't. And I was hoping that the creature from Lagoon would be the same. It just,
Yeah, I think it's harder to do though. Is like they also did a mummy really good in the Hammer films as well. They did like three Hammer films with mummies, but
mm-hmm,
the creature is like I was saying before is such a harder one to do because
mm-hmm.
of the actual creature itself and the location. And you definitely have to and maybe the script, I don't know, maybe they can't get the script right, but I think it has a possibility to be really awesome though if they redid it and they didn't do every time you see the hand, and like maybe save it for something really crazy.
I think it all has to do with the tone. I think the Mummy movies, when Steven Sommers directed those first two, he hit upon the perfect balance of action, comedy, adventure. That you would hope that some of these other films would do, but it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to do that. Like we saw the Wolfman movie with Benicio del Toro, which
yeah.
stick a lot to the original story or the kind of the ideals from the original
Right.
Wolfman
Yeah.
movie. Because Benicio del Toro loved the original Wolfman so much. Uh,
It's
but
that it's actually better than I saw it recently. They have a new 4K release of it. So it's better than I remembered it. I think something about it didn't seem right. It still seems a little off, but
mm,
I think it's still pretty good though, and it has that nice gothic sense to it.
that's why I liked it. I liked it because that one had the whole gothic sense to it. It looked like a modern day gothic movie.
Yeah.
Uh, Unfortunately, not many people could get that right.
Right. I think yeah, something seems a little off, but it's like they did the which actually in hindsight I think is a good idea. The original Wolfman movie had Claude Rains in it playing his dad, and he was kind of a neutral character who kind of tried to help him. In this one, Anthony Hopkins plays the dad, and I was kind of watching it thinking it would be more like Claude Rains' character, but he ends up being more of a villain. So it was like an
Mm.
interesting twist to it. It was
Okay,
obvious twist. It was obvious twist when you're watching the film, but
yeah.
like if you're me thinking he's like Claude Rains, then I didn't see it. So, I didn't see it until like okay, I didn't want to believe it. You know?
Neither did I. And when
Yeah,
he changed into the Wolfman at the very end, it was really odd. It took me out of the movie for a few moments, and that's about the only part of the movie I really did not like. Is because everything leading up to that is, I think, amazing. I wish the movie had been better received,
yeah,
so we would have gotten the more sequels like we did with the Mummy movies. Unfortunately, Universal hasn't been able to hit it out of the park like they did with the Steven Sommers films, which had three
yeah.
films in there and an animated series and among other things, some other stuff. So it's unfortunate. We're talking about the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's unfortunate that they haven't been able to to find that balance of adventure and a monster movie and horror movie, like they did with this one. This one was like, even the sequels for this, from what I remember, did not were not able to capture that magic that this first creature from the Black Lagoon had, and I think that's gonna be hard. Someone coming in nowadays trying to do it and not try and do it like that. We all know that George Romero tried to make a horror film when he did his, and of
Yeah.
course, uh, Guillermo del Toro did a star-crossed lovers type of movie. So,
Yeah.
but to try and get the magic that was in this first film to a modern audience is going to be hard, I believe,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
I mean,
why they haven't.
yeah. It may or may not be. I mean, it could fail, maybe, but it's hard too to say like what's going to work
Yeah.
because you could try to do like comedy and then it might people will be thinking it's too much comedy, or you could just do it just like this movie, just make it like a little bit more modern. Even if you think about it, if you just did this movie in the same time period, just kind of like they did with The Shape of Water, took place around in the 50s or whenever.
Hmm.
If you, I mean, it actually helped the movie a lot. Just the fact it was a period piece, and if you just went and just try, I was curious how it would go. You know, obviously you would have to, if you just kind of just try to just do it similarly, just not, yeah, you almost have to add something more to it. But I don't know.
Well,
I don't. Yeah, I don't know like what me. I think that if you look at what is working, like the Invisible Man and the Wolf Man, it is more of that feel of suspense of feeling like, and they do them smaller. They do feeling trapped. If you could feel more trapped on this boat than they do here in this film, that could be pretty scary if it's treated in a different way. The way it's treated here, it's not, to me, it's not scary. Maybe the audiences in 1954, they were scared to death of it, but this
Hmm.
to me it seems more fun, and I never like thought about being scared of it when I'm watching it. But it could be scary if it's done in a way like they do with the lighting and the trapped in a boat, because the characters never act too scared really. They all
No,
seem to be pretty I guess good
laid
spirited about
back.
everything that's going on. Yeah, they're definitely
Well,
got some positivity going on. It's-
well, no, you bring up a very valid point. When I do not ever remember being, and this could be just because I've seen so many horror films.
yeah,
I don't ever remember having watched any of these Universal Monsters films ever being scared. Um, I also know that because these movies were re-released over and over again over time, new audiences, new generations saw them, and they became less horrifying and more of rated G type films for little kids. Not only because they were rated the black and white, but also because they weren't very violent.
right, yeah, yeah,
You know, a lot
yeah,
of a lot of the horror and the deaths are all off screen.
yeah.
They're
It's
all off,
true.
even in
Yeah,
this movie. You know,
yeah. That damn creature grabbed somebody and knocked the shit out of him, though. But most of the time, yeah, it doesn't show that much. But he will grab somebody and tear them up. That even like say when the Mark character under the water, like him getting attacked under the water, there's no blood. It's like, I mean, that would imagine if they did that today. That scene, just him ripping the dude up underwater. That'd be a crazy ass scene right there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Unless you were to do it like an adventure movie, like Stephen
yeah,
Sommers got away with doing almost no blood on screen when people died. You know,
you're right.
because
Yeah,
it was all done for like an adventure movie.
right.
Like I would love to see a Creature from the Black Lagoon that was more like a adventure archaeology Indiana Jones type film. But you know,
Yeah.
how would you do that?
You'd have to have more plot to it in a way. I mean, it would get away from what the heart of the story here
Hmm.
in this film is people intruding on his habitat, and then him at first trying to get him to leave, and then after they fuck with him too much, then he tries to kill him. You know what I'm saying? He's
You
like,
probably have the hidden tribe that worships these creatures, impeding on them looking for the fossils. Uh,
yeah,
you have to have some scenes like that that are offshoots before you get back to the creature.
yeah. I mean, all that stuff could work as long as they don't go overboard with it. It's gonna like yeah, it could be an adventure film, but it's just like it takes away from the creature though once you start focusing on other aspects of it. I think
With,
Guillermo del Toro did a good job though with what he did though. It was focused really good on the creature, and it's actually like that film is more of the Revenge of the Creature. It's more like that film, The Revenge of the Creature, than it is like this one. Because in The Revenge of the Creature, that's when they capture him and have him in the aquarium, and they kind of torture him and stuff to that nature.
mm, okay.
But
So, so uh, I believe we've come to the place where we normally have exhausted as much as we can about the plot, about the films, but I do want to leave people with some of our final thoughts in the film before we get to rating the film. What are some of your thoughts, final thoughts on The Creature from the Black Lagoon for our audience to listen to and kind of take away from if they decide to watch this movie?
yeah, I mean, I think you should definitely watch it. I think it is of the Universal films. I think it is probably one of the ones that's a little easier to watch as far as the pacing. It is
Mm,
it is fairly well paced.
mm-hmm,
I think anyone like if you have like OCD, like I was saying with the music, might trigger you a little bit when it keeps every time it shows a creature, it has that really loud trumpet sound. It might trigger some OCD. And if the other point that you made about the female character not really being, she's there as part of the team and she should be working, but she's really not used for that purpose, and it never really
mm-hmm.
shows her doing too much work. But as far as like the pacing and the acting, the way that it's shot and the location. I think all that is freaking fantastic.
Yeah, I'm agree with you. I think it holds up extremely well. That's because there are so few movies like this out there. We have we haven't referenced many that would fall in with this that would almost seem as innocent as this, other than The Shape of Water, because you can name Humanoids from the Deep,
Yeah,
and there's some other ones out there, Island of the Fishmen, which is called something else, but
yeah,
but those movies don't have the same
yeah.
that little quality that the monsters slash Gillman would, they don't stay with you. Like there's very few of these type of creature films with this aquatic monster that stay with you, and the aquatic monster is actually very humanoid and very empathetic, because we are sympathetic because we went into, or we go into his territory, and then he responds back. There's not
Yeah,
many of them out there like that. Even Shape
yeah,
of Water, he gets captured, like you said, and
yeah,
he's taken from his wherever he's from,
yeah.
so to speak. But this is very much a man versus nature, and we should not have impeded on this creature's world. And I think that there is not enough films like this out there. And the reason being is probably because it's hard to find a good enough story that doesn't come off like Humanoids from the Deep.
Yeah. I think,
uh,
yeah, the way that the way that he looks is it's a very iconic image, and it's actually like you saying when we first started talking about it, before you ever saw the movie, you knew what he was because they have all this merchandise. Such a
yep.
fantastic design of that way that creature looks.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you know, uh, it, I hope and this and I hope that people will take the chance on this. There's not enough remakes of this out there to warrant people just automatically going back and watching this, like there is The Mummy or Frankenstein or even Dracula. People will always go back to those because there's always going to be remakes, newer versions, newer stories for a newer generation that will go back and search out these older films in order to see where the inspiration came from. Unfortunately, that is not the case with Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think the closest we get is The Shape of Water. But because that's not billed as like a remake of any type, people who saw that
yeah.
movie probably never bothered to go back to watch, or watch for the first time Creature from the Black Lagoon. I do hope that Universal finally gets off their butt to make some type of remake of this movie. It is the only one that has not been touched, and it's a shame. It's a tragedy. It's a
It was,
tragedy.
yeah, and it's like the latest one too because it is. And that's the thing. It is a 1954 one. When some of most of those other ones are like
30s.
significantly older, because it's definitely in a different time period than everything. It almost seems like it's very close to not even fitting in with the rest of them, but
Mm,
it still kind of does. But it's so close to not working with the rest of them.
hmm So, okay. So, for everyone listening to our show, we like to rate the movies that we watched on a scale of 1 to 5, one being horrible, five being excellent. Where on the scale, Dave, do you place Creature from the Black Lagoon?
I'd have to give this one a 4 star on that. So,
Okay.
yeah,
No, I'm actually going to agree with you on that one. I think that because this is such an iconic character, I would like more people to see it,
yeah.
as opposed to some of the sequels where they changed the look of them and all that type of stuff. Um, I have not watched this as much as I probably should have, but that goes with me also having grown up seeing images of this and knowing exactly who the creature from the Black Lagoon was prior to ever watching the film. I do implore people to go out there and try and watch all three of the films. Now that Dave has got me thinking that it's the same monster in all three films, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the second and third one now because it's piqued my
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah. I think actually I got a lot, and it is like do like the aquaticness to all of it. Like we're talking about aquatic horror. It does
Mm-hmm.
have a very aquatic feeling. It has even like in the second one, he's in a fish aquarium almost the movie. He's still aquatic. They have it on the beach. You know, they do a good job of keeping it coastal, even in the second and the third ones.
And the thing is, I still believe, even to this day, this is 70 years later, the cinematography I think still holds up extremely well for this movie. I cannot say that for all of the Universal horror movie monster movies, but for this one, it holds up extremely well. And I like aquatic horror movies. I always have, I always will. It's just the same. It's a shame I didn't grow up watching this one. I watched it much, much, much later in life. But I hope that that is not the same with everyone out there now. I
You should
hope that
see,
if you
yeah, you should see
what
those cameras that they're shooting this thing with underwater. They're humongous, to like two people to hold one of them. They did. I think they were very lucky with this one. Apparently, when they started to shoot the second one, they had a lot more issues with the cameras, and they were shooting in a friggin' like in the second one, they were actually shooting in an aquarium like that they had control over. The first time they're shooting in a lake where it was just out in the open, and everything went smooth. And when they had like more of a more of something that should have been more controlled, they had more problems with it.
mm, there you go. So all right. So, Dave, I want to thank you for joining us on this conversation about Creature from the Black Lagoon, the original Universal monster movie, and part of our aquatic horror month here at Conversations in Horror. For all of you out there, I want you to make sure to check out the podcast on your favorite podcast apps, Spotify and YouTube. And if you need to, you can also access the podcast direct from Libsyn. Also, make sure to check out our sister podcast, Conversations in Full Color, which is about comic books, manga, and graphic novels. That is on our Patreon supported website. Make sure to become a supporter of that in order to get updates and the latest episodes over there. From all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, we want you to have a great day and enjoy the rest of our month of aquatic horror films. From all of us, thank you so much and have a great day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.